Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Janine Donnelly. I am the manager of webinars for IBM Systems Magazine, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Today's webinar, JES System Management Software, More with Less, for Less, is sponsored by Phoenix Software International. Our featured speaker today is Ed Jaffe. Ed joined Phoenix in 1987. He became manager of research and development in the mid-1990s and was named chief technology officer in 2009. Ed co-manages the MVS program at Share and is recognized throughout the Mainframe community as a subject matter expert and strong advocate for the Z Systems platform. Fortune 500 companies and government agencies are switching to JES without looking back. Today, you'll learn why. With our introduction complete, Ed, I will turn the presentation over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Janine, and thank you all for attending and listening to me blather on for the better part of an hour here. I have actually done this presentation before, and the feedback that I've gotten is that folks really like the part where I switch over and actually do demos. So I thought maybe I would this time focus a little bit more on the demo aspect of it and a little bit less on the sort of dog and pony show part of it. So hopefully that will make everyone happy, because it certainly makes me happy, because I like fooling around with the tech a lot more than I do just saying the words. Anyway, let me get started here. For anybody that doesn't know, Phoenix Software International, we've been in business since 1978, and actually we incorporated in '79. I just learned that last month, so I did not know that. Anyway, we're a relatively small company. We have had 3 locations. We actually consolidated Raleigh down to Los Angeles, so I need to update that slide. Anyway, we are consider ourselves to be very responsive to customer needs. Our customers say that we are, so we believe them. Privately held company with no shareholders, quarterly profit demands, that sort of thing. We're definitely in touch with our code. Our developers are seasoned USA professionals. We don't outsource any part of our operation. And our customers are indeed Fortune 500, many in the single digits and all the way down to small businesses and everyone in between. The security practices, which is a big hot button these days, we use best practice security policies and stuff, so I wanted to make sure I got that out. Now, as a company, we focus on leveraging the latest hardware and software technology. And the reasons are actually, there's 4 main reasons. Number 1, we care about performance. If you look at why do new technologies come out, it's usually to make things better performing. Secondly, it's a focus on reducing customer costs. And that is really, in effect, the same thing. The new technology usually helps to reduce customer costs, a lot of times because it performs better, but not always. And then lastly, because we are, as Janine pointed out, I'm a strong advocate for the platform. Our company is as well. And we know that leveraging the latest technology helps our platform compete. As long as, of course, customers leverage that technology, then they're not going to be caught in a situation where another platform is doing something that the mainframe isn't doing. Okay? And as far as support, 5 out of 5, those are the kinds of numbers we get from our customers. And many of them, particularly government and so forth, are forced to do ratings every year. So we get those, and we feel pretty proud about that. So the title of the presentation is More with Less for Less. And what that really means is more functionality, using fewer resources, and costing less to acquire and operate. And this, on the right-hand side here, I have a little bit of a benchmark that was done actually on our old machine, but the new ones should be pretty similar. Anyway, and this is, similar products oftentimes will use SSI 80 as their way of gathering the data, and this is just a comparison of that SSI 80 against the techniques that we use. It also does not include zip offload, which we do. This is a straight apples-to-apples TCB mode comparison, since SSI-80, of course, does not run on zip. And by the way, those are big numbers, right? I mean, let me just go back real quick. Just to look at this, I mean, we're looking at like upwards of 12% faster, 12 times faster, running 8% here for JES-2, and then, like 5.5 times faster for JES-3. This JES-2 number depends on how quickly you're doing things because of the JES-2 checkpoint processing. All right, so let me move on. Cool technology. One of the things we do is we are really into technology. We like it. It's what makes this job fun. It makes it fun for me. It makes it fun for my team. And so whenever something new comes out, we're pretty much the first to leverage these things. And we have taken a leadership role. You see other ISVs catching up, in some cases still not having implemented many of the things we've done. And that applies to IBM as well. IBM also, believe it or not, even though many of these technologies are put into the operating system, that does not mean that IBM products will leverage those things. So you can just see here a brief, sort of a synopsis of some of the things that we've done. And you see there's even products today that aren't leveraging large DASD data sets. You could see there in 2007, that's when we did our zip redirect. We improved our channel programs, third quarter of 2009 to use, ZHPF and MIDOS and things like that. So we're doing a lot of very, very technical things and things that really make EJES run very, very quickly. Let's see now. Somewhere on here there is a way of getting that pointer, and every time I get here, I forget exactly how to do it. Let me see if I can remember how. If I don't, then I don't. It's not the end of the world, but doesn't look like I found it. Too bad, because I like to use that pointer. I should have done that before I got started here. I apologize for that. Oh well. Anyway, so go ahead and move on, except I want to point out that the last one now, we're doing parallel processing. We have changed all of our storage to do, 1 megabyte pageable pages. 80% of the product is A-mode 64. We're integrated with Knowledge Center. JES Web is now really ramped up and doing great, and people love it. So we're really pretty much operating on all cylinders right now. All right. So focusing on providing the best possible user experience, that is a large focus for us. It's not just technology, it's also user experience. And what we want to do is make sure that we take advantage of everything that's available to us depending on the platform that we're working with. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on here because I do want to leave room for the demo, but it is important to not just have functionality, but also interface consistency. Interface consistency is very, very important. And what you see with a lot of mature products is that over time they add things in, and as they do so, the new interfaces look a little different than the old interfaces. So, we are very careful to make sure that if we have to, we change something that was done before to match the new, better way. And that way, when people learn the product, they don't have to learn all those special cases and special rules and things like that. And the last one on here that's really important is this principle of least astonishment. And I remember first hearing about that in the 80s. And, basically, when you see it, when something violates the principle of least astonishment, you try to do something and it does just the opposite of what you expected it to do. And I'm one of these guys that likes to, just play with software without reading the book. I don't want to sit down and read the book for every little thing. I will eventually go back, of course, and read the book so that I can become an expert. But I just want to get in and play, and if something doesn't operate the way I expect it to, that is a violation of the principle of least astonishment. And lastly, a matter of pride down at the bottom, because we are so involved in the mainframe community, that the folks that we see at Share and elsewhere, those are our customers and friends. And so if we did anything less than excellent, we'd be embarrassed. So we definitely have focused quite a bit on ZOS interface modernization, and in two basic areas. One is in install, and we decided that we would partner up with CA Technologies and make EJES installable using their GUI-based CA Core software manager, and that works very well. And the customers that are using that like that interface. Now, of course, that's all their product, not all ours. All we did was make our product work with it. But it is kind of nice because you don't get into those issues where you have a half-installed product if something goes wrong in SMP. Because what CSM does is back everything out back to the beginning. So that's kind of a neat thing. That's one of the things I thought the very first time I used it. So I'm real happy with that. And the other thing that we've done, and this is all work that we've done, is JES Web, which is a browser-based interface to EJES, and it is extremely powerful now. Our intent is to create a de facto interface for users that are uncomfortable navigating traditional 3270. And in a sense there, you could maybe say you want to cut corners because you're basing your decisions on what you believe that demographic to be. In our case, I think we may have started off thinking that that was going to be the case, but what we ended up doing was making JES Web extremely robust. It does almost everything that the 3270 version does. And so you don't have to, it's not really dumbed down. And there's still work to do, but I mean, and I'm going to hopefully have a chance to demo that quite a bit later, so you'll get a good look at it. I will point out at the bottom of this slide, it mentions that this is a Java-based implementation, and IBM has really given ZOS Java very highly preferential treatment. And a couple of shares ago, Russ Maury was the keynote presenter, and he asserted that the Java that runs on Z systems, and in particular that runs on ZOS, is the best Java out there across all platforms, bar none. It is better optimized. It is just a fantastic implementation of Java, and we really kind of lucked out there. We jumped on that bandwagon, and we're really glad that we did. This is what we call the EJES solar system. It's just a pictorial of all the different interfaces and ways that you can use EJES. There's a standalone, upper left-hand corner, a standalone TP monitor. There's TSO users that can get in using different methodologies. There's straight batch. There's C-lists using two different approaches. We do have a Windows interface, which we are deprecating in favor of our new web stuff. Then there's APIs, all sorts of APIs. So you have assembler language, C, C++, COBOL, PO1, Java, Rex. Just about any way you want to call EJES, you can do it. And then we use that in our EJES Web. You can see down at the bottom a little Tomcat icon down there. EJES Web is the servers running on Tomcat, and that's using the Java API, which is in turn using the C++ to call the assembler API, which then runs the core. And that EJES core is the part that runs on zip. And then we have a thing called the Galaxy, and that's just to show you essentially that each of those solar systems is one system's worth, one ZOS system, and then for each JESPlex, those are talking to each other, and then we're also talking across the whole sysplex in some cases. And this is meant to be a pictorial of that. So you can see we're leveraging XCF technologies. We're also leveraging the coupling facility and a list structure therein. Now, zip redirection, I think by now everybody ought to know this, but I still have to mention it anyway because we put a lot of effort into this. I think I remember it said we did it in 07. Basically, if you move your work to zip, you're lowering your software bills, particularly for things that run at peak time. And so anything that's interactive runs at peak time, right, which is usually the afternoon, early afternoon, or maybe before lunch. Those tend to be peak times for interactive work. Some shops have peak time being batch. That really just depends. But anyway, if you move the work to zip, you're not being priced on it, charged for cycles that run on zip. And also, zips tend to be underutilized, so the queues there are a little shorter. Things tend to run there. Also, zips are typically not enabled for the same kinds of interrupts that regular CPs are, so you tend to get more uninterrupted time. And if you are on a subcapacity machine like we are, then you really get a benefit out of zip because you get on there and all of a sudden you have a fantastic performance boost. So ours is that we're running a Z13S D03, and I think the zip runs about 12 or 16 times faster than our CPs. So anything we put over there, runs really fast. Now, of course, if you're a very large, company, financial institution or something, and you have all full-size processors, then you don't get that particular benefit from it, but you get the others. And of course, by moving things onto zip, you reduce the load on the other processors and reduce the size of their queues and stuff. Also, nowadays, zips can be multi-threaded, so that's another benefit. And you can get, we've clocked ours at getting about 1.4 times what a single one would get, overall. So that's pretty good stuff, too. There's a lot to be said for that. And so this little pictorial on the right is basically, this is where I kind of wish I had my my pointer working. But anyway, there's an ISPF user, and the person presses enter, and then the arrow goes up to the CP. ISPF itself runs on CP, so some of the work runs on CP. Then it gets into EJES. That's the sort of the diagonal lines there, and then EJES puts this back onto the zip. And then we run everything on the zip from that point forward, including I/O and everything else. The reason we can do that is because we wrote our own I/O driver, and so we're not forced to return back to the CP to do I/O like many products would be. So we don't incur that additional overhead of 4,000 instructions or whatever you want to call it to do a task switch all the time. There are some services that won't run on zip, but most things do, and so we stay on the zip. And then when we're done, we come back to the CP, and the transaction ends. We write the screen back to ISPF and all as well. So we have measured in our own benchmarks, we've gotten as much as a 94% upload. That is an upper bound, but it's a number we're very, very proud of. The other great thing about our design is this client-server request response model that we use that differs from the traditional one that you normally would see. And we don't use it for everything, but we use it for all the sort of job-oriented work and things that we can predict. So this picture right here is a picture of normal client-server request models. And if you're in a Sysplex and the information you want is on a different system, then you have to participate in this sort of a thing. And so with a traditional model, you have all these various requests. In this case, I'm showing 20. And then the 20 requests go through whatever kind of network there is. And then over on the remote side, you have so many units of work to handle it. It may not be one-to-one based on clients, but basically each client is could be asking for exactly the same information and firing off different requests on the other side. So what we've done is optimize that dramatically. And what we do instead is we have a local server that acts as a proxy and maintains these result sets. And the requests that come in, many of them are indeed for exactly the same data, and that's just the nature of JES and things like that. And so what we're able to do is batch these things up, have a single request that goes over to the remote server, it comes back, sending back only changed pages, updates the result set on the local side, and then all of the requesters break free and then satisfy their requests from that. And for some period of time afterwards, requests will be satisfied from that. And so the result is a dramatic CPU savings. The larger your shop and the more users you have, the better this design scales. And so instead of hitting the knee of the curve like you would in the traditional setup, you actually do better and better and better as you have more and more and more customers, clients trying to request data. And there's no observable delay, and it's just has been the way we've done things now for gee whiz, going on 25, going on 30 years, I guess. So it's really served us well. Okay, so rather than going over all these highlights of tabular displays, this is probably where I might want to break here to see if I can do some a bit of a demo. So let me switch over here and see if I can figure out how to make this work. it's working. And then I think I also have to do one other thing if I want to make it full screen. So let me see if I could do that. View. Okay. Apologize for that delay. I hope that wasn't anything that bothered anybody. So here's an ISTF screen here, and what I thought I would do is just go through a few things here. So like if I go into just a regular tabular display in EJES, like that's EJES, that's the what's called the entry panel. There's also a menu if you prefer the menu, but many people prefer the entry panel because it essentially has a bunch of input fields on it that can be useful. And right here, I'm essentially displaying everything that's here. I'm doing the 3270 part here in JES 2, and then I'll do the web-based stuff in JES 3. So just so I'm being fair to both JESs. Anyway, when you're on a display like this, there's all sorts of filtering you can do. So one thing you could do is when you're calling it, you could say, well, I only want to see jobs that start with list. So that's one kind of filters, and there's a whole bunch of those that you could put on a command. A second kind of filtering you can do is the primary selection. So let's say I want to leave out, all jobs that start with, I don't know, how about init, anything that starts with init. So those all just disappear. Third kind of stuff would be these additional selections. So you could say something, for example, like show me everything less than 10,000 records or something like that, and that would, leave a number of other things out. And then lastly, of course, you have regular, more generic type filtering, which we call meta filters. And if you go into this dialog, or you could do it through command, you can do a lot of this. So one of my favorites is to say something like filter the max C equals AB asterisk. And then everything that appended will show up there. And that's because I'm in filter true mode. And if you look at this line here, it actually, I don't know if you could see my pointer or not, but anyway, on this line that says filter, you see filter true. It's telling me that that's true mode. If I switch to false, then I'm, showing all the ones that don't match, right? Or I could say filter color the true ones, and now I'm colorizing. In this case, blue is what's showing up for the color. And I've sort of reversed this for a demo. I think normally we use blue for the normal color and green for this, but you can customize it any way you want using this thing here. So just people have said green shows up better on demos, so that's what I'm doing. Anyway, so there's all kinds of filtering like that. There's also all sorts of arrangements you could do. So you have these fixed columns on the left, variable stuff on the right that scrolls, and right here in between is this scroll point. So you can move that scroll point. You can move any of the columns around. If you can either do it through this arrange dialog and move commands, or you can do it through, just regular commands. So if I said like arrange / after job name, for example, then I've just moved this scroll point here, and now it's there. So you can basically customize yourself to your blue in the face on this. If you want to just show certain columns, like let's say you want job name, job ID, and records only, right? Then you're limiting it to that, or you could say, go back to default, and let's say you wanted to hide records for some reason. A lot of this stuff is great for when you're writing scripts and stuff. But even interactively, everything works because basically our scripts are nothing more than a wrapper around these commands, okay? So there's a select command in here. It works exactly like the ISPF version, not like, some products have redefined some of these commands. We do everything just the way it, you'd expect it to be. So if I did like select EJES asterisk and browse, then I'm basically saying I want to browse all the jobs that start with EJES asterisk. Now that's because the first column is the one that you do a select on. So if I moved something else into that column, like suppose I said arrange owner before job name, now I would be, now owner is the first column, and so now if I said select HKC, for example, now I am, well, I didn't do a browse, I did a select there, but all the ones that were owned by HKC is what we're doing those on. So basically, you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to handle these sorts of things. All right, so let me go back to the defaults there. What else could I, that's select, there's If you want to put row numbers up, you can put row numbers up, and then you select. You don't have to have the rows showing, but it's much easier if you do select by row. So if I wanted to, instead of going down here to browse this SMF dump, maybe I could just say 25 browse, and then I'm browsing that SMF dump, right? Because that was record 25. Or I could do row, I could do ranges, I could do multiple ranges. There's all sorts of things there that you could do. A lot of kind of powerful sorts of things there. And that is actually an extension to what you would normally get in ISPF. You wouldn't normally get that. Other things on these displays, there was a discussion the other day on IBM Main, actually last month, about being able to say something like DA-O job just to show jobs, right? And this is a great example of interface consistency. In our case, if you say ST-O job, then it's only showing jobs on that display as well, or ST-O-STC, and you're seeing only started tasks and that sort of thing. So if something works on one display, it works on all. You don't have to say, oh, only on this display does that work, and on these other displays, these other things work. Another thing we have here is pop-up help for every single field. So an input field like the command field, there's pop-up help to tell you what commands you could put in there. And you can see there's a lot of commands you could do. You also have pop-ups for the actual columns themselves. So like job name, that's no big deal. That's pretty obvious. But what you're basically doing is training users on what these things mean, because there's help for every single column. Now, some of it is really good. If you go down, like we've highlighted these admin codes here, but if I ask for help on that code, then it actually tells me that the job was canceled by the operator without requesting a dump. So there's all kinds of help. It takes quite a long time to put all this in, but that's part of our process. We want everything to be absolutely, incredible to use. We want the interface to be amazing, and so we put in those extra things. Now, something like job priority is an input field. So if I went up here to the top and asked about it, it says, oh, that's the priority. But if I go into the field itself and ask about it, then it tells me what sort of values I can put in there. Okay, so now this is a real easy one because it's numeric, but when it's the kind of thing that has just certain values that are allowable, like let's say this duple job, no delay. Presumably, I haven't tested this. There you go. It tells you can say delay or no delay. So that's an example. Every single input, there's help, and it tells you all those sorts of things. You have, I showed you that filtering. There's clickable, of course, sort. You could sort on any of these fields by clicking on them. And it's a tri-modal sort. So you're either sorting ascending or descending, or you're back to the default sort. Or if you go into the sort dialog, you can do up to 4 keys. My favorite is time descending. That's what we're on right now, and that's what I normally use. And if I display all here at the top, you can see a lot more options. And one of the things here is it'll show you my sort is time descending right here, as opposed to what you might want to do or might not. The default display on is just that one line, because that's what it takes up less real estate. Anyway, then there's browsers. So let me just go into some of that and see. Let's see. This is JES 2. I probably don't have the one job I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to JES 3 real quick, because I know there was a job in here that I ran. We accepted a whole bunch of maintenance on our system. So here's a job, and we happen to run that one under JES 3. So I apologize for switching JESs. But anyway, it's all the same no matter which JES you're on. And if I do something on here like SMP out, let's say I want to browse all the SMP outs, then I can do that, and I can go next and pop through them all and look at every single report like this, one at a time. When I hit something that looks interesting, what I can do is I can turn box mode on, and then that limits my scrolls and finds to just that guy. So even though I'm data set 17 of 52 over on the right, I'm still just concentrating on this guy. When I go back to box off, then I'm back to the more complete stream here. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff in there. The finds themselves, let's say I do a find on the word originated. And I see all those originated. Well, I don't have to poke through them all one at a time like you would in ISPF. If I do Shift F5, then I'm moving on to the next page, right? So that's an extension to what you would normally get in ISPF. And if you want to use real ISPF function, you can. You just type view up here, and now you're in ISPF view. And now you can do all the things ISPF view would allow you to do, such as excluding lines or running edit macros and things like that. And if you don't want to go through it as a multi-step process like that, you could do it straight from here. Let me get all the way out. Oh, I see why. Yeah, let me find that guy again. If I just did BV, for example, then I'm just going to be viewing that guy directly and not have to go through that intermediate step and then type view. All right, so then I think I'll go back to the presentation, see if I can figure out how to do that, and keep going with what I had. And then I'll get back and do some demoing on, hopefully on JES Web. So I also talked about some of the native browser functions, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that, but I will point out that there are different browsers. That one I showed you, but then there's message summary that will show you, all the messages issued by the job. There's control block displays, a lot of sysprogs might use for debugging. Contention analysis. You can edit the job JCL. There's just a whole lot of stuff in there, and when you play with it, you really appreciate a lot of that stuff. Our extract facility, second to none. I should have shown that while I was in there, but anyway, not only can you target 3 different things: classic MVS datasets, sysout, and ZOS Unix, but you can also do it by, you don't have to know the name in advance. You can put in a mask, for example, and this will show you all the existing MVS datasets if you want to overwrite one, or you can say, I want to create a new one, and then you put the name in. And like in the case of ZOS Unix, you would traverse the whole file system there. All right, pardon me. Our API, again, it's really the best of breed. We took an approach that turned out to be a really good approach to take, and it made our API super easy to code, super easy to use, and yet extremely powerful. And it's so powerful that we have written our entire JES Web product using our API. There's no like back doors or anything like that. There's nothing that we're doing except maybe for a security thing. But other than that, there's nothing we're doing that you can't do that isn't documented. And you could do it really in Rex or Assembler, C, Java, whatever you want to do. And then also we do have this ISF calls emulation, the last bullet that I have on there. And that's something for investment protection. If people have a lot of existing scripts written using ISF calls, then that helps them there, because those things will pretty much almost all run unchanged. We have an additional framework, and I'm going to show you an email. I'll send an email, but basically we have this thing called Customer Application Infrastructure. You can write your own apps, and these are the ones we distribute down at the lower left-hand corner there: FTP, email, XMIT, receive, resubmitting a job without editing, etc. Many customers have written some very good scripts here, and it's just, it's a good community. People are sharing, and we help people write these things. So it's a great way of extending the product. I mentioned the CA Chorus Software Manager install, and basically in our install, it's just a yes or no question right in the middle there. You see CSM yes, and if so, on the fly, we build the input to CSM, and then the receive, apply, accept is done through CSM, and then there may still be some jobs to do post-apply work that would need to be done, as opposed to being in the left-hand path there where you do the full install and you submit all the jobs. Our licensing has always been enterprise-wide MSU aggregation, and many companies started off doing, just one KEC at a time and then sysplex at a time. Now you hear about country at a time and stuff like that. Anyway, ours is always enterprise-wide and always has been. So kind of going quickly through some of this stuff because I want to get to that JES Web demo. Some highlights from the press. What did we really do here? It's all good stuff. This parallelism is very powerful on the left-hand side near the bottom. asynchronous multi-system displays. We used to do them one at a time, and then we did it all asynchronous. So it really sped things up in the large. The account that was complaining about the speed there had a 13-way JES-plex, JES-2, JES-plex, and we cut their time down from like 10 seconds to sub-seconds. So they were really happy with that. And then virtual storage constraint relief. For us, it's great. I mean, we're just making EJES A-mode 64 left, right, and center. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about EJES Web here. Basically, the structure of it, you see at the bottom working up, that's where the client is. That's because I'm a mainframe guy, so I always put my code at the top. I guess the guy writing the client might put his code at the top. But anyway, at the bottom, you see the native browser code. Then we go through a jQuery layer, which basically simplifies a lot of the differences between browsers, so you don't have to code as many special case things. And then we're using AJAX transactions, which are all asynchronous. They include HTML, JSON payloads. That goes up to the mainframe, and on the mainframe we have the web service REST API that EJES Web is putting up. Then it is sitting on top of the EJES Java API, which it is using. The Java API is sitting on top of a JNI layer that's part of that API, written in C++ that actually calls the EJES API. And then, of course, the EJES base. So all the Java part runs on zip, actually ZAP on zip, and then all of the base part runs on zip because EJES does that natively. And then the only part that's potentially going to run on a CP would be the C++ JNI layer. But it turns out that's a lazy implementation that if you call it until the next interrupt, you're still running it wherever you were running. So it actually works out to our advantage because that's quite a thin layer. And so what you're seeing is a huge amount of redirect onto zip. And one of the things we've done is we don't want there to be any sacrifice of performance. So, and I'll show you that in a second. It is really, we've done a great job on this thing. EJES Web really runs great and performs and does so many of the things that the 3270 does that now we find that 3270 users are starting to actually play around with EJES Web, at the very least to be able to do some of the things it does that 3270 doesn't do, but also to be able to show other folks how to do it. And what I was getting at here is some kludges that you see in other implementations. And we don't do any of that kludgy stuff. And so I don't really have time to quite go into it, but basically what you see is some very hokey sorts of things where a display is broken up into a lot of pieces, and then you have to go from one piece to the next, and it's just an ugly implementation. And in EJES Web, it's all a single stream. We hide any of those complexities. We have these pop-ups and things that will happen. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and switch over now to EJES Web and go ahead and demo that, because I want to leave room for questions in case there are any. I'm also going to make I know I need to make this full screen. Just have to remember exactly how. Hopefully it worked last time, and if it worked last time, it ought to work this time. So, okay. All right, so I believe I have it there, and now what I'm going to do is switch over to a browser here. Let me see if I can get this to switch over. Okay. All right, so I have this browser, and I put this in ZOSMF on purpose because one of the questions I got on a previous webinar was, can you launch EJES Web from ZOSMF? And of course the answer is yes. We happen to put it here under the software, but you can put it wherever you want. That's just a ZOSMF feature. And so I've logged in, and here I'm running. Now, we don't want our code to be in this window. I personally don't think this looks all that great, to be honest. And what happens is it's just, I mean, it's the way they're doing it, and that's fine. That's for their code. But for us, we really want our code to be the way we want it to look. And so this is EJES Web right here. Now, it jumped into status initially because, well, I'm a status kind of guy, and I like to see everything that's in status. If that's not you and you're the kind of person that prefers a log or something like that as your initial display, then you could, over here, choose log. And that's your default now, initial. And then if I go in and click on it when I first get in, boom, I'm in the log. Okay, so that's customizable. Look how fast this thing is. I'm scrolling up in this log, and it's moving just as fast as a 3270 would, in my opinion. It is really fantastic. You have help that's in here. The help is great. The JES Web User's Guide is built in. JES reference is built in as part of the product, so you don't have to go somewhere else. If you get a message, let's say if you do get a message, let me put in a bogus command, bogus. And then you get a message. If you click on that message, then it takes you right to that message in the help, things like that. Okay, so that's all as robust as we can make it. The way that you navigate around in this stuff, let's say I went to status. By the way, you can see I'm putting commands in the bottom. If I'm a 3270 user, bigot, whatever you want to call it, I can go directly with these commands just like you would in 3270, or I can navigate through this navigation pane up here, menu. And what you see is that every single display in JES is supported. That's because our API is so good. It's all automatic. When we add something, it just shows up here automatically without really having to do anything. And because we only have three kinds of objects: tabular, browser, or the fixed width displays. We don't have a different object for every display. So this is a very, very robust thing. It's a very robust implementation. It does absolutely everything. Of course, bottom is bottom, T is top. You can do up and down, all the things you expect. You could do select either using the mouse like I just did, or you could do keyboard-based selection, and when you do that, something like that. Oh, sorry, I should have hit Shift. Shift. There we go. I'm not an expert with this. Sorry about that. That's the downside to trying to demo something that you're not absolutely the expert was. I was trying to get that to give me a shift-click type thing there, but let me see. I'll try one more time. I'm not hitting the right keys, obviously. All right, but anyway, if you double-click on something, you're browsing it, and when you do the find in here, you have all the same facilities that you have. I probably shouldn't have double-clicked on that one because it looks like it may have a password in it. Let me find a listcat job. Hopefully there's a listcat job in here. All right, no listcat job. Let me find some. How about an SMP job? Or some sort of accept job. Okay, there's that accept job that we had from before. So if I double-click on that, now I'm browsing that thing. Okay, and if I do a find in here on, say, GIM, then I have all the same kinds of support that I would have in ISPF. It looks very similar. You have, in fact, all the same facilities. You could do a find GIM last, for example. You would just use the same ISPF type stuff you're used to using, and it's all there. There's support for labels, so I could set a label there. I can go down, or go up in this case, I guess, and set another label. And then later on, locate to those labels, go to A. It takes me there. I can issue system commands. And there I did a display ASM, and I got that back. In fact, let me make this bigger. I don't know why I kept it so small. There's no reason for it to be small. I can make it a large display here. When you're on these tabular displays, you have all those same filters, right, that we had in the 3270. What's neat is you can enable them or disable them just with one key. So in this case, I'm not sure what I've got set in that primary selection. Oh, I turned off all the jobs that start with auto, and I'm looking at only my own jobs. So if I do P, then I'm looking just at stuff that has my user ID in it. And if I'm doing not P, then I'm getting the other. There's also meta filters. I could turn those on or off, so I have that same functionality in terms of, oh, I see, I had the meta filter on. Yeah. Let me get out of that. Here we go. Now I'm doing the P the way I thought. Yeah, so these are my jobs. These are all the jobs. Those are my jobs. These are all the jobs. So, and down at the bottom are hints. So you can see down at the bottom now it says filter. That tells me the main primary selections are on. And if it says filter and meta filter, then both sets of filters are on. And you can see here I'm highlighting add-ins in red. So other kind of thing we do is, let's say you want to look at something as a PDF. You want to download a PDF. I'm going to take that list cat. I'm going to download it as a PDF. Gives me the option to save it or open it. I'm going to go ahead and open it. And there's that list cat job as a PDF right there. Okay, so that's a capability that does not exist in the 3270 version. It's only in the web EJS Web version. All right, let me go back to EJS Web over here. As far as 3270 commands, again, I did a right-click on there. If there's something that you know, because you're a 3270 user and you know of a command, you could just do it, like :B. We'll do B for browse, and I've started a browser there. What's great about these is, of course, these can be pulled out and put into other windows, right? Or you can also tell EJS Web through its options that there are certain ones you want to put in other windows. Somewhere here. Oh, here we go. Open in new windows. So you can force some of these things to be opened new, or open in new tabs, or just to replace the thing you're on. So hopefully you get a feel for it there anyway, and I realize that a couple of things I tried, they do work, but I just, under pressure, I don't have the exact keystroke that I need to make that particular thing work, but you get the idea. This functionality is very, very robust, and people are using the heck out of this thing. And, all of the functions that you really expect to see in EJS, here's a good one. Here's where if you want to see what kind of processor we're running, I earlier issued this command here, and I guess I must have done that before you guys arrived when I wanted to make sure it was working. So you can see we're on a D03, somewhere up here. It shows, yeah, D03 right here. And but you can see we're getting fantastic performance out of this thing. Okay, one more thing I wanted to quickly show you, a little bit about the API here. I had written a very simple, very, very simple program just to show how simple it can be, yet it's very robust, as you could see, because EJS Web is written using this API. But if you don't, then, and you want to make something super, super simple, this one statement here, statement number 3, is all you need basically to issue an arbitrary command called CMD. Okay, and that's true for many things. And we have a stateful API as opposed to stateless. So if I didn't say comma term here, then it would stay up. The API would stay up, and I could look at the responses. I could make decisions about what I want to do next. You're not forced into that classic stateless type design that you get with many things that you call from Rex. Anyway, so if I run this thing, and I issue, again, that DASM command, it should pop that in and give me the output, and there it is. So that shows you, really how simple this stuff can be if all you want to do is something really simple. And if you want to do something complex, well, you saw EJS Web. That's very complex, and so much of it is automated. All those menus and things, all comes out of the API, and so there's just really a lot of power there. All right, so let me go ahead and end this and get back to the end of the presentation. Hopefully I didn't leave anything too critical out. Oh, you know what I left out? Was being able to email myself. Yeah, I apologize for that. Now, I should have really demoed that. You know what? I am going to demo that. I'm going to do it very quickly. I realize I'm cutting into Q&A time, but I think it's important because I think it's a great function. I'm not going to take time out to maximize the screen, though. Okay, so anyway, so if I'm sitting on a display like this and I see that I issued this list cat here, one thing I could do is in the list cat itself, sorry. Oops. One thing I could do is in the list cat job itself, I can have a step in there that calls EJS mail and actually mails the output of the job or any DDs that you want to a user. So in this case, I'm going to mail this to myself. Okay? So that's one way you can do it. And a lot of people are using that. You put it in, and it's just automatic. You don't have to have an ancillary process somewhere. JES doesn't do it natively. This little thing right here, this is our little letter. It could be read in from a DD somewhere, something that's all good. And then basically we're just saying we want to use NJE. We're sending it to this node system and node name. That's a subject of the email and stuff. And hopefully you'll see this ampersand JNA was a substituted symbol, so the job name listcat should appear there. The other way that you could do email is basically from inside the product, using that customer application infrastructure. Those are the ones that we deliver, plus this one at the bottom that we wrote for our own internal use. But anyway, you can either select it right from there, or you can shortcut it and do .m. Anyway, and then here you have from to CC. On my CC list, I could add somebody. Let's say I want to add Ray Mullins. I saw that he was on the call, so I added him to my list of CC. Now you see these 3 dots over here. This is a demo for a different webinar. I'll call this the IBM webinar. And hit enter, and it should go ahead and send it. So it's really just that simple. And there's if I go into my email now, if I bring up my email now, that's always a dangerous thing to do, but I live dangerously, kind of by the seat of my pants a little bit sometimes, as you can see. But if I go ahead and bring up my email, hopefully at least one, if not both of those jobs should have showed up there. Hopefully nobody could see my password going in, and hopefully nobody sent me anything that's of a personal nature. So we'll see. My inbox is reading, and getting near the end. Okay, and I see a lot of spam. I don't see my email. So sometimes it takes a little while for them to show up. So unfortunately, I probably should have done this earlier in the demo and then come back to my email at the end. But anyway, had I done it in a better order, maybe they would be there. I'll refresh it one more time to see if they're there. Nope, not yet. Okay. Well, anyway, you get the idea. A lot of customers are using that, and they love it. And I will go back now to the presentation and just finish it off right here. And just a clarification of what our business model is. Our business model is the name of this presentation. It's articulated on the cover of the presentation. We offer more function and ease of use. We use a lot fewer resources, and we cost less money. And the idea here is to remove the traditional trade-off associated with software purchases, because normally it costs more and you're getting more function. So then people are sitting there saying, well, can we get by with what we have, or do we want, more? Is it worth it, the extra cost? In our case, it's just the opposite question. Why pay higher for less, right? So it becomes a purchase decision of all time. And how do we do that? That's on the right-hand side. Of course, it's, nothing's free, and the answer is we don't have pension plans, we don't have highly paid execs, we don't have highly compensated salespeople, we don't have stockholders taking cash out of the company. So our license costs are a lot closer to the real cost of doing business without all that overhead. And that's that shouldn't be any surprise. It's a very, very simple thing. And our broad business objectives basically is to continue doing what we have been doing. We want to develop world-class software that leverages the latest technology. We want to help our platform compete against alternative platforms by taking advantage of new technologies and making things as useful as possible. And, of course, our customers, we want to, as a byproduct of those things, help enable them to stay competitive in their respective industries. So I apologize that I ate into some of the Q&A time, but if we have time for a couple of questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Ed. What I'd like to do is just let everybody know, in case we do run out of time here, go ahead and submit your questions. Feel free to type those in now. And what we'll do is we will have a representative answer your question via email. And in the meantime, as you're doing that, I want to let you know that later this week, it'll actually be early next week, we will be sending out a link to a recording of today's webinar to everyone on the call, as well as to anyone who registered but for whatever reason could not attend today. So you will have that to come back to. And other than that, I'd like to thank you, Ed, for sharing your expertise with us today. But we are at the top of the hour, so again, there's also a website here, contact information. So we'll be sure that someone gets back to you to answer your questions. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. That concludes the webinar, and have a great day.